Like, you got to go somewhere, find some place that you're interested in, and go live there for like 6 months to a year before you make any decisions. Don't go somewhere just thinking, oh, I'm going to go to this place, I'm going to buy a property and live there. First of all, you'll get ripped off. And second of all, you might live there for a few months and realize, I freaking hate this place. And then you're stuck.
Welcome, friends, to a podcast with interesting people. I'm Adrian Sinclair, and today we're bringing back Tristan Haggard from Primal Edge Health. And last time we talked about his journey from being a vegan and vegetarian, and then finding carnivore diet and keto, and what he and his wife Jessica are doing in kind of sharing the knowledge of how wholesome living can be accomplished, wholesome lifestyle can be accomplished, and how animal products have changed their lives and their families' lives. Originally from California, they moved to Ecuador, changing their lifestyle even more in the sense of removing themselves from one environment into another. And today I wanted to talk to Tristan about that journey, the aspect of picking another country to live in. Why did they do that? How did they choose to go to Ecuador? And so we connected with Tristan again. And Tristan, welcome back to the show. Really happy and stoked to have you again, and just kind of pick your brain and see how you're doing, and kind of sharing some of your experiences and knowledge about how to move into another country and just really build out that wholesome lifestyle that you guys are enjoying over there.
Yeah, thanks, man. Adrian, it's an honor to be on. I'm really glad you wanted to have me on, and I'm here for you, man. I'm stoked to chat.
What you guys are doing over there, a lot of people like wet dream, living in a beautiful place, still connected to the world through the magic of internet, yet living this beautiful life with a lot of control of what you guys are doing over there. And that's kind of like what the first episode, like I said in my little intro, we talked about carnivore, we talked about vegan and vegetarian aspects. So food wise, now I want to talk about the latter component of that wholesome lifestyle, which is location, right? Where you guys are living, why you chose where you are, and how was your journey to get there?
We came down here in 2010. We decided, it wasn't really it wasn't like we were looking for anything very specific. Right? The criteria for where we wanted to travel to was basically we wanted to go somewhere where it was good clean air, good clean water, and Ecuador fit the bill. We were looking at different countries in South America. My wife had been in Costa Rica. She spent a little bit of time there. We wanted to go somewhere where it wasn't so touristy, right? So like Peru seemed a little bit more popular as a tourist destination. And just Ecuador fit the bill. So we ended up visiting here, and we enjoyed the small little town down here in the south of Ecuador that we found, and we ended up moving here. So it wasn't really it was kind of a serendipitous series of events. We've heard about Ecuador. We wanted to go to a place where food was relatively well priced, where the air was good, where the water was good. And Ecuador is just a small little country that not a lot of people know about. Most people have no idea where Ecuador is on the map. Spoiler alert, it's on the equator. That's why it's called Ecuador, which is basically equator in Spanish. So it's been almost 10 years now. In November, it'll have been 10 years that we've lived in Ecuador, and we enjoy it. How
was the beginning phase of that move? Like, you decided, I assume you guys traveled through Ecuador and said, hey, this town is nice and it kind of fits all the criteria that you're looking for. Like you said, food and air quality and all of that stuff. And how did you guys decide to, like the transition part? Like, all right, so here we are. Did you guys just pack up and everything is in two suitcases, or did you guys ship a lot of stuff? Like, how did you find the property? And for those who are that this is totally foreign, they don't know how to do something like that, and yet they want to either have a second location outside of the U.S. or maybe they just want to move and kind of enjoy the lifestyle that you're enjoying. How did you guys go about even purchasing the property?
We came here in 2010. Like I said, I was 22 and 23. I think I turned 23 that year, and it's been a long ride. We didn't know that we were going to want to stay here. So we came, we visited, we stayed for a few months, and then once our visa was up, we flew back to the US, and we figured out how to get more permanent residency here. So we got a student visa after our initial 3-month visa. And the visa laws are always changing in all these countries, especially in South America, constantly shifting and changing laws. But we ended up getting a 6-month visa, extending that to a year. And then our daughter was born here in 2012. So then once our daughter was born here, we had residency. We didn't have, I mean, as far as like what we brought when we first came, we just came with a couple suitcases. We didn't know how long we would stay. We knew you could get a 3-month visa when you come into the country. So we ended up staying that whole visa and wanting to be here, and flew back to the US and got rid of most of the rest of the possessions that we had there, which was basically just a couple vehicles and some other small things, and came back with a few more suitcases full of clothes and just supplies and random little things that we weren't really able to get here that we wanted to bring from the States. And we stayed. So we didn't send people send shipping containers when they move places. Right. We didn't know how long we would be here, and we didn't end up purchasing land until the end of 2017, I think it was. It was September, October 2017. We finally were able to buy the land that we live on now. We went through a couple cycles of thinking we were going to move somewhere else, right? So, as far as like people trying to do what we do, I wouldn't advise most people just up and do it. Like, you got to go somewhere, find some place that you're interested in, and go live there for like 6 months to a year before you make any decisions. Don't go somewhere just thinking, I'm going to go to this place, I'm going to buy a property and live there. First of all, you'll get ripped off. And second of all, you might live there for a few months and realize, I freaking hate this place. And then you're stuck. Yeah, I think it's really important to go someplace, stay there for a little while, make sure you can maintain your sanity there, that you enjoy it there, and then make the decision to stay or to start searching for property or whatever it is you want to do. But yeah, it took us a good 7 years of living here before both saying, okay, we probably would want to stay here long term, and then also to be able to afford land, right? So to be able to purchase anything as well was took us a while of working really hard and saving up and living very meagerly, very lean. And after some hard work and finding the right spot, we made it happen. So it definitely wasn't like a straight line, and we knew exactly how things were going to go down. Right. And we came down here after we finished university. We were both thinking about maybe going and doing more schooling. I was looking at getting into either chiropractic or naturopathy, becoming like a naturopathic doctor or chiropractor. I didn't really want to go into massive amounts of debt in school, and I wasn't really sure that it would be a very stable climate to be continuing my education in. This is back in 2009 when I started making this decision of whether to continue with school or to move on and do something else. And I just didn't see much of a future in academia, or I didn't like the idea of being in debt and tied to an office all the time. So we took a different route as far as economics and career paths go, and it's been nice. We don't we're not wealthy by any means. We live well within our means, and we work hard for what we got, and we feel really fortunate. We're blessed to be able to be here and have a little piece of land on a mountain. It's a steep pile of mud and rocks that we live on, and yeah, we're really stoked to be able to produce some of our own food. And we've got a couple cows that we're milking right now. We've got about 10 sheep on the property right now. We've got chickens, and our children get to grow up around animals, and that's what we're focusing on, is building up real skills in the immediate environment, as well as we work online. We work really hard here, and a lot of my time is spent doing what we do, and really fortunate for that. Really fortunate to be able to generate an income through the internet. However long I'll be able to do that, we'll see. It's been a wild ride. It's been fun. It wasn't a linear journey, and we had no idea when we were at point A where the hell point B was going to be. Right. But we ended up enjoying pretty much every step of it.
I think that's so bold, man, because a lot of people who are working day jobs, and they complain that this job is just grinding me to shreds, and they complain about that. But at the same time, they enjoy the stability of that, let's say some sense of security, right, of a steady paycheck and all of that. But at the same time, they long for this of what you got, right, which is that I'm a self-made person, right? I kind of I make my own future. I may not know all the answers, right? I may not have the not from point A to Z. I have point A and B, maybe C somewhere over there, right? But not everything planned out. And I think it takes a lot of grit and a lot of balls to basically just say like, hey, this is what we're going to do, and we're going to try it out. I like what you said. It's like you guys didn't know where you're going to end up. You just kind of like, okay, let's give it a try. Worst case, we're just going to go back, right? So it's kind of try before you buy type of approach, not this kind of grandiose plan that, all right, we're going to have this on a mountain, 2 cows and so on, like all of that kind of, folded in over time, not from the get-go as a kind of a vision, which I think is even more interesting and scary at the same time, because you're like, I don't know what we're going to do, and how are we going to make that happen? So that's really ballsy, man. That's I appreciate that you sharing that, because
I wish I had like an action plan, like you mentioned, other people who might be trying to do what you do. It's like, man, we can barely even do what we do. So we have no idea how we stumbled upon all this. And I mean, it's just it's kind of coming to fruition through a series of, I don't even know what you call it, serendipitous events.
Events, yeah.
Everything's kind of just synchronized and allowed it to happen. And if it didn't happen at the time, I mean, timing was really important as well. You know what I'm saying? It's like what we do now, I mean, the market that we work in and the climate that you're working in on the internet with algorithms, with Google, with all these big tech companies, it was a lot better environment to generate money in 4 or 5 years ago. You know what I'm saying? It's like, it's very, very difficult to maintain an income online right now. And as more and more people are becoming interested in it, you've got a flooded market basically. Right. So it's like, I mean, we feel fortunate to have gotten in at the time we did, and kind of built what we've been able to build. It's not huge. It's not, it's modest, and we feel fortunate to be able to, to still generate income. We work harder now. We work more hours. We work harder. We grind harder now than we did 4 years ago, and we make less. But it is what it is. I mean, we're trying to, we're looking at kind of transitioning more of our economic energies to be more local production of food and stuff like that. And, we all got bills to pay. We all got things that we got to take care of. But it's, as far as one of the important parts that I think a lot of people don't think about is timing, right? I mean, it's like the time that we came here, it was very different. Even Ecuador's changed a lot in the last 10 years. When we came here in 2010, it was relatively off the map, but becoming a popular expat spot. Now it's not even on the map as far as like places where people are trying to move, right? When you look at like the top destinations for expats who are trying to leave the US, I think Spain is really high up there, whereas it used to be like Ecuador and Mexico, they're not even in the top 10 anymore. So things are constantly changing.
What do you think happened there? Do you have a theory why people?
It's just the economic situation is really screwed in Ecuador. Global geopolitical stuff.
Is Ecuador still on US dollar as a currency?
Yeah. Which it does work to the benefit of Ecuador in certain ways, but there's, I mean, all of Latin America, they're vassal states of the United States and of China. And it's just they're viewed as essentially piggy banks to be shooken up and harvested and rearranged on the chessboard. However, the economic interest please. So you see a lot of changes within administrations and just constant corruption going on and the looting of all these countries. And there was civil unrest in Ecuador back in October. Like a major event happened here in Ecuador in October. And if it weren't for the lockdowns, I mean, the IMF published this. It was either the World Bank or IMF. I forget who published it in this blog the other day, saying that these Latin American countries are basically a powder keg ready to erupt. The only thing that's keeping them from erupting is the lockdowns and the COVID fear, which, I mean, there's a very fickle situation here economically, and the price of oil dropping dramatically has been very, very harsh for Ecuador, which is an oil exporting nation. The tourism has been crushed by the current situation, and this current administration is very unpopular, and there's just rampant corruption in all these Latin American countries. Right. Still a beautiful place, but just economically the situation has changed, and it's no longer a destination where people are thinking, hey, I want to go live there right now, which I don't mind. we like it peaceful and quiet here.
Right.
I like not seeing a house on the mountain right across from us.
Right next door.
Walk in front of my house naked and no one see me.
Forget about like on the other mountain, like next door, or like, like in California, the population density, everything, like you literally are like elbow width of between houses, But
that's another reason we came here. That's what we wanted to get out of that situation, and to live anywhere in the U.S. like that. It's different. It's different. I mean, there's places you can in California, but it's not. I don't know, California. I mean, I just talked about some of the messy geopolitical situations going on in Ecuador, but I mean, you couldn't pay me to move back to California.
Right. I feel the same way right now about East Coast. I don't want to go back over there. Utah is serving us well. It's just a little bit slower lifestyle, and definitely the accessibility to mountains and all the outdoor living is definitely a huge plus. Because
do you find that it took time to adapt to the slower lifestyle? People come here and I see they're just like all starry-eyed, and then they get kind of they get some isolation and some alone time, and they either end up divorcing their spouse or just basically kind of getting stir crazy and hightailing it out in a few months.
I'd say that is dependent on what stage in your life you are and how ready you are for that, in terms of adjusting to a slower pace, right? I think that if you are in your 20s and you're gung-ho, you got that, that spunk and that energy, and you are, let's say, East Coast New York or West Coast in California, LA, just crushing it and doing all of that, yeah, more power to you. You have to kind of get that out of your system. It's a good experience and everything, but then at some point would you value, especially when you establish family, right? You just like, the rat race is just not worth it, right? You are doing this for the money initially. It's fun, it's crazy, it's stimulating, it's all of those things. But then when you want to slow down, you want to have a little bit more quality of life and less hectic, you really want to remove yourself from that environment, because it's very difficult to slow down when everybody else around you is just going at light speed. And so for me, moving out over here, it felt just great. It just fell in right to the place. I was like, hey, I enjoy not being in mile-long lines at DMV trying to get registration for your car. I enjoy, all these different, just the outdoorsy access to everything, because like you have no excuse not to do it. And I think that's part of, like, again, location. If you are at a spot that is helping you achieve what you want to do, it's that much easier to do. Right. And sure, you can grow a little garden in New York City and on your windowsill and, put 2 planters over there and make believe that you are living on a farm. But that's just not quite it when you're going to move out to Ecuador and live on a mountain, right? That's the reality when you face it, when you're there in that location. So, so we're happy here. I do like the idea, we always traveled, we always explored different countries. I've been to Ecuador several times. I really loved it over there. I agree with you with the assessment of how these South American countries are, they always have that perception, that image of like being unstable, and there's always some kind of political unrest going on over there. But I think you can find these pockets of peace where you're far enough from the city, and especially if you, which is what you guys are doing, is like if you can manage to have income or manage to do a business that's not as connected to a local economy, then you kind of have the best of both worlds. Meaning that you can still enjoy where you are and then have not be impacted by the local economics situation, right? Which is, we both agree that those countries have definitely issues with that respect. It's interesting what you mentioned with how YouTube and doing business online, especially with like YouTube and maybe monetizing some of that stuff online, has changed. The environment has changed within the last 5 years. There's definitely more competition and more people online doing interesting things, and that's just, I guess, progression of things, right? People, and I think in part it's because people want to be independent. People want to, like, especially now with COVID, look what's happening. People are working from home for companies that before would not give them a second of a day to talk about teleworking, right? You have to be in the office. You got to be micromanaged. We got to look over your shoulder, make sure that you're producing, right? Now they're like, oh, you got to stay home and all of that. And so things are shifting, and I'm hoping that they will become more permanent. And with that, people will maybe see that, hey, maybe it is possible to do some of this stuff online and secure living. But going back to what you guys are doing, I think that you said like, well, you guys are working harder for the same amount of money that 5 years ago, but at the same time, don't you find that you have to be more resourceful? You have to really push the edge, to push forward, to not be stagnant in what you've been doing like 5 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, it's just different. I mean, you can't do the same thing. Like, you can only say the same thing so many times. You're just like, I'm done with that. I'm moving on.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So you gotta do what you enjoy. You got to enjoy what you're doing. You don't always have to do what you enjoy, but you got to find a way to enjoy what you're doing. I think that's part of it.
And I think that's an important aspect to bring up as well. You move out to another country. You're in Ecuador. You're doing well. And then you're like, okay, I'm tired with this. We're all of us, I believe, are like lifelong learners. I am definitely, and I know you are as well. Continually just kind of explore new topics, new knowledge, and kind of assimilating it and incorporating into your life. And I think that's a healthy thing. And when people are, you get stagnant. You get stagnant when you just stop developing, right? And it would be actually a shame if we would just do the same thing over and over again, right? Because then you're like, hey, it's boring. It's boring as shit. I don't want to be doing the same thing. Two, when you get that little bit of a pressure to kind of push forward and be innovative and come up with new things, you get that challenge. And yes, it's scary because you're like, heck, am I going to be able to pay bills this month? Or am I going to be able to feed my family? But at the same time, it's pushing you to develop and to really conquer new things. What do you think about that? How does that factor in with what you guys are doing now?
No, totally agree. I mean, if you're not pushing into some like uncomfortable territory, you're just getting stagnant, right? I mean, the stagnant water is where parasites breed. So you gotta be moving. You gotta be always moving forward. Now that doesn't mean like you always have to be making more money, right? I mean, if that's the most important thing, then you're gonna probably end up being pretty miserable. But if it's like if what matters is just the income and just the number in the bank account, it's like you're never gonna be satisfied. And no matter what you do, it's not gonna be enough. Right. So I think, having goals beyond that's really important, right? Understand, having goals that go beyond the materialistic goals, super important, right? Like integrity.
Right.
I mean, what are you really about? What do you really believe? Do you really stand for that? So I think, the whole family aspect of what we do, that's really cool. As far as like just the work and stuff and what we do online, I've kind of taken a different direction, like I used to do lots of like short videos and coaching style videos, 10-minute clips and stuff like that. But I mean, there's only so much of that you can do, right? There's only so many times like I can't revisit that same stuff. And people tell me all the time, oh man, I miss this style of video. But it's like, cool, I don't. They're all there. Yeah. It's like you miss it, go watch it. It's still there. What do you want me to do the same thing except wear a different outfit? Yeah. What's the point, right? So it's like it's transitioned in a different way. I do a lot more live streams and long format conversations and more current event type stuff. And it's been fun. It's been a good journey, and I enjoy the shifts that have happened. I wish you could just say what you want on these social media platforms, right? Like, I mean, there's a very thin line of what's allowed, right? And that's changed constantly too. You never know when you're just going to get slammed off. I mean, they took Stefan Molyneux off and they called him a white supremacist. Right. I don't know if you're familiar with Molyneux, but he was pretty middle of the road, Western neoliberal thinker, not neoliberal, but the classical liberal thinker. And YouTube took him off and for political reasons, obviously, and they called him a white supremacist. So I mean, it's just it's weird where things are going, and it's like, well, what? You never know when the Overton window is going to shift, and suddenly, like, oh, you're a pariah for saying this. Terrible, kick them off the platform.
Right, censorship.
And that's the censorship's very annoying. The algorithms, the way those work, it can be hard to figure out. But if you consistently build your platform on what you're passionate about, what you enjoy, and you've got integrity with it, you're going to build a core following that can expand regardless of algorithmic manipulation, regardless of if your content is hidden deep in the algorithms, regardless of if it's even possibly suppressed and blacklisted, right? I mean, we've seen a lot of stuff with Facebook and YouTube and being exposed for so-called shadow banning, right? I mean, this happens. I think it does make for a more stale environment as far as the content that people put out, right? Because people are trying to put themselves in this marketable box. Oh, I've got to be advertiser friendly. And it has degraded the platforms to a certain extent. But that doesn't mean you can't build up a following. That doesn't mean you can't build up your own structure that utilizes these platforms, and then you can, maybe monetize outside of these platforms. You should never rely on, like, when we first started YouTube, it wasn't even monetized, right? And once the monetization hit, I was like, oh, it's done. Like I thought it'd be faster. I thought it would take less time than it did to really get crazy. But yeah, once the monetization came, it was just the clickbait. I got to get the most views. That's when it started. And people were making a lot of money in the first few years of monetization on YouTube. They were making serious cash.
I think that's it's a sad state of affairs with how the monetization basically hijacks what kind of content is going to be produced, right? It's the negative incentive, as I call it, because it's like people are like you said, clickbait. How can I get 20 million views or 100 million views or whatever it is, right?
I'm gonna get my lips done and get some breast implants. Like, you got to show the most cleavage. Like, Twitch is just about girls bouncing boobies and playing video games. I mean, that's the whole platform is basically cleavage.
I think that's a sad state of affairs. I think that's just, it's upside down. Instead of like using this allowing this to grow as a narrative base, as a conversation platform. It's like just kind of like, oh, look, something shiny. There you go. That's what everybody wants to look, and that's what we're going to promote because it gets the most clicks, so we can sell the ads. And I think it's just so internally biased. And I don't know. What do you think is going to happen next with this?
More censorship. I mean, just the window is going to get smaller and smaller. Unfortunately, as far as like, we'll just build another YouTube real quick. YouTube loses a significant amount of money. As far as Alphabet, the parent company of Google, who runs it is allowed to lose money because it's a powerful social engineering platform, right? So I think we're probably going to see more tightening up, especially coming up to November. I mean, everything's so politicized now, so we'll see more. And we've seen a slow closing up of the window, because if it happened all at once, people would kind of say, "Oh, this is ridiculous. Look at this." So it's been a slow rollout, especially over the last 4 or 5 years. It's gotten crazier and crazier. So unfortunately, I think we'll see that. I think we'll see other people trying to go alternative routes. Maybe I think audio without video is going to become a lot more popular. We already see that, right? Podcasting is huge. People are probably going to get bored with the if everyone's going to suddenly podcast, like you see it now. A lot of people during quarantine getting into podcasting, right. So you'll see more saturation and maybe more difficult to get seen or heard within that, and you'll probably see more big corporate sponsorships coming through. Right, like you had Rogan with a $100 million deal with Spotify. So you'll probably see more stuff like that, and some of these other platforms putting money into trying to bring people in, and maybe some people trying to build their own little thing. But nobody has the computing power, right, and the ability to do streaming like YouTube does. I mean, I don't know how many thousands of live streams are going on at any given time on YouTube, right. But the computing power is staggering. That's required for
huge infrastructure that you need to kind of pull that off. There is a silver lining in this kind of, though. There is efforts, and there are some platforms out there that are slowly building up to the capacity, which are like distributed based, meaning that it's just basically distributed network instead of centralized servers. Now, the quality, of course, is not going to be there as dedicated servers and data centers full of racks of servers that are doing this all the time sitting on fat fiber line pipes and all of that. But like you said, maybe that's what's going to happen. It's going to turn into audio, and then it's going to be just distributed more, so that it's going to be a lot of different computers. And maybe everybody's going to host at some point on your computer, because everybody's computer is pretty much plugged in all the time. Your phone is a computer; it's plugged in all the time. So I think that may kind of progress and provide some solutions to this.
I think you're right, because I don't think the video capability won't be there with distributed networks like that, but audio could be a possibility. And most people are listening to this stuff all day anyways, right? Like they're driving their car, they're listening to a podcast. They're not necessarily watching most of the time. A lot of it's just listener based.
I think it's good. Again, I'm biased because I do video and audio podcasts, but I think it's good to have an option to kind of record when you can. And like right now, we're recording independent of YouTube or anything. This is just going direct, so direct between our computers. And that's, so you can still record it and then still be able to maybe through that distributed platform, because those systems are kind of improving as well. It's just kind of like how is that going to be figured out monetarily? Like maybe there's through some kind of cryptocurrency payments, everybody's going to be like earning a couple dollars a month to kind of share their computer to be part of this network. Things like that may happen. And I've seen
that seems to be the model. That's kind of the economic model that is being pushed, right? More people working remotely, more people working from home. Jacques Attali wrote about this in his book, The Brief History of the Future, and he's kind of a technocratic thinker. He was the mentor of Emmanuel Macron, and he wrote this book, The Brief History of the Future. It was translated into English in 2009, and he talks about, and this was before cell phones were made, he says back in 2002 or 3, I think, is when he first published it in French. And he says that nomadic devices, surveillance-based devices is going to be the future economy, and surveillance, self-surveillance, as well as live streaming. He even talked about like live stream gladiatorial type stuff becoming really popular, which interesting concept. But he says that you're going to see a nomadic society of digital nomads that will be tied in centrally through a decentralized network of centralized control. So it's kind of like this Orwellian doublespeak there, but that seems to be the model that is planned. It's kind of like a internet-based economy and a more surveillance-focused economy where everybody's live streaming for social credit points.
It's kind of weird how with this constant connectivity, it shapes our society in these weird ways where these incentives, social pressures are really influencing people. And that's why in part, I think that's why in part people kind of long for what you're doing in the sense of removing yourself out there physically. So you're in a tiny town somewhere in Ecuador. You're not in this kind of pressure cooker of Western civilization, and at the same time you are connected. Yes, you are being impacted by the changes that YouTube has and algorithms and demonetization and censorship, all of those different things, which I think is a sad thing in a way because of it's going to be such a monolithic content at some point when everything is going to be just kind of so aligned with these boundaries of what's allowed to be talked about, right? And it's not going to offer a lot of creativity, at least not a lot of it, anyways. So now you're kind of like, so I want to kind of bring it back to like, your lifestyle and that wholesome lifestyle. So in the first episode, we talked about food and how that's impacting your just functioning as a human being. Location, we're talking about location today, choosing a place where you are. I like the kind of try before you buy approach, which is, just logical, but a lot of people are
super important. Don't forget that one. Don't just go somewhere and buy land. Right. Like you gotta live somewhere for at least 6 months.
Experience it. Yeah, live it, experience it, and everything has ups and downs, and it should. It shouldn't be just like everything is peachy. I live in paradise. Come to Ecuador, everybody. No, it's like you have to gauge your own threshold as well, right? What is it that you want? How much of stuff you can tolerate that makes it still worthwhile to live over there? If you could go step back into a time machine and talk to yourself before you guys moved in or before you bought the house and place where you guys are at, what would you do? Would you do things any differently? Would you just go still with how it ended up?
It's so hard to say. That's a great question. That's a great question. I'm gonna do my best to dip and dodge and dive under because it's so hard to answer, right? It's kind of like a Jenga game. It's like you pull one piece out and the whole thing crumbles and it doesn't work the same. So, right, this hypothetical is so hard to imagine. It's hard to imagine things being differently because there were times where it was like, okay, the next step is just what we have to do. Like we didn't want to do that. Right. It's like, but we're just it just happened that way, and it ended up making sense at the time. Right. And sometimes we had times that we wanted to leave and go somewhere else. We couldn't figure out where that would be. Right. But if there's one thing I could change, it'd be nice to have gotten in, just maybe timed some things earlier, I guess. Right. With the time machine, it's kind of like, get the winning lottery number and then you go back and you.
Right. Outside of that,
as far as like things that we would do differently, I can't think of a single thing. Give me an example, like from your recent life, and like what maybe you would change, and how you switch it up.
Actually, you know what? This may be a trick question. We may consider this as a trick question, because I ask this question because with a lot of my guests, when I talk to them about that, I get surprisingly most of them saying I wouldn't change anything, because I am now here where I am because of all these decisions, and maybe all of that happened for a reason. I'll give you an example. One of my guests, Ian Rader, who was an affluent guy from California, drugs addicted, homeless, girlfriend overdosed, like basically just tragedy, like a whole just
the California dream, right? That's the California lifestyle.
That's beach bomb, like that. Movies were written about that, but like it's kind of like everything just a tragedy stitched together up until this point that he's where he's at in his life. And I asked him that question. He said, like, Adrian, I'm here because I'm here now and I do what I do. And he does this sobriety works services where he's helping people getting out of drug addiction and just squaring off their lives. He, so from homeless, he's a homeowner. From business, from jobless, he's a business owner. Has apartments where he rents it to ex-felons, coming out of the prison system. So wow. He's like, look, do you think I would do this? Coming out a rich kid from California, do you think I would do this without going through what I did? No, that's what shaped me. And so, I didn't mean it to be like a trick question for you, but like maybe there is something that you would have changed in terms of like, hey, going back is like, hey, maybe we should have stayed in the States. Maybe, we should have pursued a corporate career or something. We'd be secure paycheck every month and we'd be just like kind of living this life, or not. Or is it just like, hey, yes, it's touch and go a lot. Yes, it's scary sometimes, but this is what made us stronger. So
no, exactly. I totally concur with you, man. And that's what I'm saying. It's like it's hard to say, oh, I do this differently, because I appreciate how important every single stumble along the road was for learning to find our balance. So it's not, there's nothing I really regret, right? You know what I do remember? I remember back in 2009. A friend of mine in the university telling me about Bitcoin. I'm like, that's an NSA scam. Like, I'm not putting any money into that. I'm gonna get like silver and gold or something. I'm gonna buy some stupid fake money on the computer that probably made by the NSA or something. And then, blew up, right? So it's like they're like the one thing, like maybe I should have listened to my crazy friend who was like, hey, let's mine some Bitcoin in 2009. And he wanted to buy mining rigs and then put it in the dorm rooms with the college kids, because we were like almost out of college. He's like, we'll find freshmen, we'll put in the dorm rooms because we'll get free electricity and internet and we'll mine Bitcoin. And so there you go. There's the one. But it's all hypothetical, right? It's like, I appreciate every mistake that happened along the way. If I didn't have, if I didn't make certain mistakes in my past, I couldn't get to where I am today. Yeah. So it's really difficult to say. But I wouldn't have stayed in the U.S. I definitely wouldn't have continued with the university system. I maybe would have gotten out here a little bit sooner, set up shop a little bit sooner, maybe. Right. But
well, look, you still have big brass balls, man, to do that. I mean, to a lot of people, what you do is it almost, it touches the impossible, because it's like where people are just like, I need to get my, live till 65, 67, retire, and then my life is going to start. And I think it takes a lot of courage to kind of do what you do, because, you're going into an unfamiliar environment. You don't know exactly what you're going to do. You might have some ideas, but nothing is solid. And I think there's a level of resilience to that. When you have like unstructured, it's kind of like you're put in a new environment and just make the best of it. And I think that's what really shapes a lot in character. That's why I'm asking, like, would you go, if you could go back, like if there's anything that you would change and what would it be? I definitely
Bitcoin mining 2009.
I'm with you on Bitcoin. I'm with you on Bitcoin. It's just crazy, and it's like it's still here, and it's still working very well. And you could have just bought for like $10, probably 1,000 of them back then. And
well, I remember when it went up to $3, it was like, oh man, it's gonna crash now. Maybe that was like 2012. It was like pennies. It was worth nothing at that time.
Did you hear this thing about this pizza, that someone bought pizza with Bitcoin, something like that? It was like the most expensive pizza ever.
Like 1,000 Bitcoin.
Yeah, like 1,000 Bitcoin is something for pizza.
Yeah, that's funny, man. No, that was a funny time. It's been a cool journey, and we do feel fortunate to be where we are. I mean, you say it takes big brass balls, but maybe it just takes a real small brain. to do to do it. Maybe you just got to be naive enough. But we a lot of it just comes down to faith, right? It's like we got faith in God. We know everything's going to be all right, and we know that. I mean, it's not just about like physical comfort. You know what I'm saying? It's like you get too comfortable and you can get miserable.
Right.
Or comfort breeds misery. Comfort breeds weakness. So we appreciate the harsh times we've had, and we hope that it doesn't get too much harsher. But things are probably going to get weird in the next couple of years. No matter where you live, it's going to get weird. End of this year, probably going to get weird.
Is it because it's 2020? I mean, can it get more weirder than what it is right now with COVID and everything, with the pandemic, social
November,
distancing?
Right? Oh yeah. Wait till
let's talk about
second
that.
Wave. The second wave you promised to us.
Yeah, it's all right. So we're going to segue into that for in a minute. But I wanted to kind of maybe wrap up on the part of like living in another country and some experiences that you had and some pro tips that you can give to people outside of what we already talked about, which is, try before you buy, live over there for 6 months to kind of get the sense of things when they are up or down, right? So you know exactly if this is what it is, if it is for you, and then things that you've learned. Like what would you do? Like if you would move again right now, maybe even within Ecuador, like what would you do differently, or like what would you have done to kind of maybe give me some lessons learned, maybe some failures or some mistakes that you guys made and you've learned from that now you would just obviously be wiser about it, if any.
Yeah. Again, I mean, it's a difficult one. I mean, it's really timing's so important with so many things. All right, timing's really important. Right. Depending on where you want to live, I mean, you can. Here's one. I mean, just wherever you're going to go, definitely consider like the climate and microclimates around you when you go and move somewhere. Right? It's like you might think you like the cold, but you might freaking hate the snow. You might not be able to handle it. So I think picking where you live geographically, considering climate, that's a really big one. Like here, you could pick 1,000 different microclimates. 2 mountains over, it's raining all the time. 1 hour east of here, it's jungle, miserable. Right? I can't handle it. It's what do you call it? Humid, massive humidity. The coast, loads of mosquitoes. Right, the beautiful areas on the coast, tons of mosquitoes.
Yeah,
right, and so I think picking where you want to be, understanding how much climate does play a role in your physical and psychological makeup. I think being in an area with the climate we have here, that's very enjoyable for me. I get seasonal allergies though to grasses around here, but I can deal with it. I've dealt with it all my life. So it's like unless I live in a place where it's like a dry desert, I'm going to get seasonal allergies when there's grasses that are blooming. So, I think that's a good thing to consider is just the climate, where you want to be, and what do you want to do, right? It's like if you're looking to run cattle, you're going to want to be somewhere flat, right? If you're looking to have as much herd density with livestock as you can and have a big operation, you're going to want to be somewhere flat with water, right? So, this is important too. I mean, if you live up the top of a hill, you might have to pump water up there. Yeah. So don't expect to be growing a lot of water-hungry crops or doing a lot of things that require lots of water if you live really high up and you don't have a source of water coming through gravity coming down. So, microclimates are important. Neighbors, Another thing is just consider who you live next to, who you live around. You know your neighbors. Do you know them well enough to trust them in a stressful situation, right? Will they have your back? Will they watch out for your home? These are important things. So I think getting to know the geography and the social geography is really important.
Right. What's your sort of like social support network over there? You mentioned neighbors, and being a foreigner in that country, in a way, you want to build that social support network as well, right? So if something happens, you can.
Yeah, if you're not an outgoing person, if you're not like. If you can't go somewhere and if you don't speak the language too, right? If you're not going to be able to learn the language rather quickly, if you don't know the language, you can get ripped off everywhere, you're just going to be seen as like an idiot that's ready to empty his pockets if you can't speak the language, you can't read social cues. And you see that a lot. People come and retiring down in like the Spanish-speaking countries, and they're, from Toronto or Miami, Florida, never spoken a lick of the language in their life, and it's just like people are just looking at them like, oh man, this guy's an idiot. Right. I mean, it's imagine. I mean, it's like dealing with. So you're suddenly immersed in a place where you don't speak the language. You're like a vulnerable child, basically. Easy target. So you got to consider these things, right? Safety is an important thing. Like, people do get ripped off everywhere, right? And I mean, culturally, business practices in Ecuador are super shady, right? Like Ecuadorians rip off each other all the time, and they'll brag to each other about it. Oh yeah, I ripped that guy off. Like, dude, they don't care. Like, the person's gonna find out that they got charged whatever 50% higher for an item. They don't care. It's like, you're not gonna get a sale in the future, but you don't care if you just ripped off this. It's a funny world. Right. So I think that's really important, right? Like being able to communicate wherever you're at. So I mean, it's not a problem for me. Like we enjoy where we live. Right. I enjoy the people we live around. So I make friends wherever I go. I'm very amiable person, but I keep to myself as well, right? Like, I enjoy my solitude and I enjoy my friends. So we ended up buying where we bought. Part of it was like the neighborhood we live in, right? We enjoyed the neighborhood. There are a lot of people, everybody's lived here for several generations, most of them, and then the immediate neighbors, we've got some like fellow expats who speak English as well around us, so it's like we got a nice mix here. So I think that's really important too. It's like going somewhere where you're going to get along with people. I think and understanding if you're going alone, it's going to take time for you to figure out what's really going on around. Right. You're not going to see it clearly when you first move into a place, especially if you don't speak the language as your first language. That's why you got to give yourself time, exactly. Because you might move somewhere and it's like, oh, it's beautiful here, and you're not going to see the seedy underbelly. Right. Yeah. I mean, there's things everywhere. People are people wherever you go. Right. And there's no paradise on earth where it's just perfect. Yeah. Right. We're always vulnerable. We're always manipulable, and we're always able to ourselves do terrible things. So I think you got to consider all that. And where you live, who you live around is very important. So I think a lot of people go places and they go in kind of naive, right? Thinking that, I'm just gonna, it's gonna be great, it's gonna be cheap. Yeah. And they end up either miserable or getting ripped off or getting robbed, right? I mean, there's crime everywhere. Yeah. Right? Where we live, it's like pretty safe, but I mean, people get robbed. It's not just expats. The Ecuadorians get robbed more so than expats. So it's like, you got to consider all these things, your ability to protect yourself. Yeah. Right. There can be legal barriers to being able to protect your property in certain places too. So it's just you got to consider all these things. I think it's really important, and your own social abilities, don't over or underestimate them. And some people think, oh, I'm really cool, everyone's gonna like me. Right? It's like, well, I don't know, maybe you got to work on it a little bit. maybe you got to work on your communication skills and reading people. Right. I mean, people come into a different culture and the social cues might be different. Facial expressions are different regionally, right? So you might not be able to read people socially when you think you could before. Right? Coming out of New York and living in Utah, I'm sure people communicate differently. Right?
I think it's important to kind of consider all those things, and thanks for bringing in all these different perspectives and aspects, because again, I think a lot of people have this romantic view of just moving out somewhere because they are just so sick and tired of what they have right now. And they just like, oh, my solution is this. I'm just going to go and move out somewhere, and that's going to be perfect. And I think it's just a healthy attitude to know that, hey, A, you don't know enough. 2, it might be just the same or worse. And just because you have this romantic view in your head doesn't mean that that's what's going to happen there. And so I like the try before you buy. I like, test things out. I like the, go and live over there for a little bit and just kind of test it, figure out if this is for you. All these moving parts, all these variables, the climate. Yeah, you might be in a beautiful place, and then suddenly you didn't realize, like you said, there's going to be one season that's going to have like so many mosquitoes or something that's just going to eat you alive, and you're going to be miserable. And then
so I say, like, go a cycle, live a year where you're living, feel every season. Yeah, right. I think that's important. Like, my mom comes and visits, and she gets bit by some of these little flies around here. You call them no-see-ums, but her legs just blow up. Like, she gets this allergic reaction to it. Yeah, and it would be unbearable for her to live here.
Right. And you wouldn't know that. Like, it could be like, oh, it's great, 3/4 of a year, and then this one season comes in and these things come out, and you're like, oh man, I'm just miserable. I hate it over here. And so your life is just upside down suddenly.
Yeah. Well, speaking of being miserable, if you're miserable where you're at, don't just think that moving somewhere else is going to suddenly make you not miserable, right? Sometimes we got other things that are going on other than just, your geography is not going to, your external geography is not going to change your internal climate necessarily. It might help at first. You might go through a honeymoon phase, but then eventually you're going to be faced with like, oh yeah, I make myself miserable every day. You're going to have to deal with those habits too. And I think a lot of, I mentioned earlier, like knowing a lot of people that would move here, like a lot of people left the States in 2012, right? Because they thought the world was going to end or whatever. And there was so much going on at that time. Everybody's freaked out.
Everybody knows it's going to end in 2020. That's so silly. Yeah, well, come on.
They just got it wrong.
End of Mayan calendar.
So there were a lot of people that left during that time, and couples, right? And then they moved out here, and suddenly they're away from all the distractions that they were using to keep themselves going. And the things that they were avoiding are suddenly right in front of their face. And they end up getting divorced or making each other miserable or having, adulterous situations that, crumble their relationship and destroy it. And it's, I think that's people got to consider. It's like you're never going to be perfect. We're always human, and we always are fallible, and we always are you're making mistakes. But don't think that you're going to run away from your problems by going somewhere else. Right. Your problems are coming with you, regardless of how light you pack your bags. You're bringing them with you.
Right. Oh man, that's such a good. I'm glad that we kind of touched on that topic because I think it's so important. Like people think, and again, it's like external environment impacts you, but also like what is within you, right? What like you said, like you can change the environment and place where you live, but then if you're still bringing that dirty diaper with you, it's still gonna smell, it's still gonna stink, right? So you got to clean that, clean that shit too, and so that's an important aspect that people may be overlooking, right? That might be, okay, I just need like change of scenery. But then, like you said, and I haven't even considered that. I think that's an important topic to mention as well. Maybe you were numbing yourself where you were before, like, binge watching Netflix and everything else just to kind of numb down what's happening inside. And now you're in this
go to the bars, go to the mall. Like you don't have that suddenly. Where are you going to go?
And what's going to happen to you?
You're stuck there with your spouse who you've been projecting all your insecurities on for the last 5 years. And suddenly you're both blaming each other for all your internal problems, and then it just blows up. So you see a lot of people come here specifically, and then like they end up breaking it off and both hightailing it out, more miserable than when they came.
Wow.
Right. So it's like I don't think people consider this, and it's just like I think we always got to be ready, especially when you move somewhere. You got to be ready to face those demons. You got to be ready to own up to what it is that's really going on. It's like, what cycles are you constantly caught in that you're not seeing? And these are always things we should be asking ourselves, regardless of where we're at. And we can rearrange the deck chairs on the Titanic and think that we're doing something to benefit ourselves in our lives when really, like, we're not even looking, that we're going right towards the iceberg. So I think it's important to kind of, not to scare people away from making steps in your life, but understand that sometimes you might be running from something, you don't even realize it.
Right. What are you doing, and what happened to you guys? You and Jessica, when you guys moved out over there and you settle in, now you bought a property, you're doing all your online, coaching and business and everything. How did you guys have a moment where it was so tough that you guys were like, oh, okay, let's kind of see what can we do about it? Where are our strengths? What did you guys do to transition as well? And, to kind of sidestep those issues.
That's a good question, man. I mean, we went through definitely some hard economic times, especially at first, right? I mean, I was working online, working the import-export business for foods, right? Organic foods, a lot of this stuff that was being sold to these big vegan companies, right? Like cacao and maca and a lot of these South American products, and then products from other places. And, just seeing that industry was kind of an eye opener, seeing how it really works in the food industry and with the so-called like superfoods and this stuff. Yeah. That was always fascinating. But I mean, it was just, we definitely had some tough times where we didn't know, and like, what are we going to do? Right. How are we gonna make a living? So I mean, that could be a stressor, right? I mean, right. But we're fortunate. We love each other very much, and we always work together really well. And we've kind of been able to build this. We both leverage our own strengths. She likes doing the things that I can't stand doing. I don't even keep a calendar. I'm like, she keeps my calendar. She's telling me when my meetings are. I'm like, I'm just, I'm not thinking about what's going on 3 days ahead. I'm just grinding in my way. And she's doing the same thing with her strengths, right? So we've kind of combined our strengths, and she strengthens the business where I'm weak, and she plugs up the holes that I allow in the hull of the boat. And so we've had struggles at times. Like there are times when we thought, we don't really want to live here anymore, or maybe we want to go somewhere else. Mm-hmm. We were thinking about going and checking out some places in Europe, like 5 years ago. I mean, we've gone through a few different cycles of that, of just like, maybe we really want to be here, maybe we want to be somewhere else. Yeah. Maybe we want to go check out places in the U.S. We thought about going and looking at Montana at times, but it's just, I don't know. I think we're always looking for more. We're human, right? We always want to do better for ourselves, and we always want to have, we crave change, but we also crave stability. Yeah. Right? We always wanted someplace where we could build our own homestead and live relatively freely.
It's like balancing that pencil on a tip of your finger, right? You if it would just stand over there and it'd be just solid and not move, that'd be kind of boring, right? On the other hand, if it's too out of whack and you're just running all over the room to kind of try to balance it, then you're just you're driving yourself crazy. So there's that sweet spot, and it seems like the longer I live on this planet and experience everything, it seems like it's more of the duality of things. You can't have the good without the bad. You can't have the happiness without sadness. You can't have all of these things, two sides of a coin. Everything has this duality, and I think we are stronger when we realize those things, when we go with that flow and that understanding that, the pursuit is not to find a place that's a paradise and everything's perfect, because if you would find that, you would just get bored as shit in no time, I think, so like we need those kind of the downsides as well, and to kind of keep us engaged, keep us, because we love change. We constantly look for different things, right? And that's just part of life. And I think it may be just a wrong direction to go if you're pursuing this one place and like, okay, I'm going to climb this mountain and that's where I'm going to be happy and all my problems will be solved. No, even there you're going to have issues, and the sooner you're going to realize that the cycle of up and down is just what life is all about, and you accept it, then it's going to make it easier for, you're going to make it easier on yourself.
Yeah, we're not really certain. I think people seek, I don't know, sometimes you start seeking like stagnation almost when you're doing that. Right? Like the stagnant pond, that's where the rotten water is. That's where the parasites breed. So I think you gotta, as far as where we're at here, I mean, there isn't the paradise on earth or this perfect place. That doesn't mean you shouldn't seek like, peace, and you shouldn't seek stability. Right. But I mean, we're always looking to expand and grow what we're doing here, and right. I mean, hopefully a couple years from now, we're doing more of what we're doing now at a bigger scale, and
Yeah, let's
Yeah, I
talk
mean,
about
just
what's next for you guys.
the struggle is important, right? You shouldn't look for comfort too much.
Right.
Comfort's important, but it's about, you got to balance that out. You get too comfortable, you're gonna be miserable.
Yeah. What's next for you guys? You published books. You're very prolific on podcasting and talking about current topics. Definitely talking about food and the future of food. I looked at your couple of recent podcasts and we're talking about different topics. Whether it's the fake meat stuff or what's happening in terms of like even maybe censorship and what is next for you guys given this kind of environment that that we're all sort of beholden to in terms of like YouTube maybe demonetizing things and you mentioned a little bit about like that you should never depend on that because that can be just so quickly and swiftly taken away, right? The revenue model, so you always have to have like a basket of variety of different income sources. So how do you guys what are you guys going to do next? How are you guys going to grow in terms of like, are you expanding your operation in terms of the scope of it, or are you just expanding it in terms of the depth of it, how many more people you're bringing in to offer them the same stuff?
That's a good question. I mean, we're gonna keep going where we're going. I mean, we've got a lot that we're working on this year as far as just the back end, the website, kind of like SEO type stuff, right? Google's always changing, and you're kind of at the mercy of these changes in the algorithm. So, but there's a lot. Jessica's been working really hard at revamping the website, so we're working on that. We might end up, like, I've thought about changing the YouTube channel name for years now. Honestly, the only thing that keeps me from doing it is I have that little check. It's the only check mark I'm ever going to have on the internet. I've got it on YouTube. There was a time when YouTube was just giving them out. They were handing them out like Halloween candy. And if you had over, I think it was like 50K subs, it was really easy to get your little check mark. So it sounds ridiculous, but it is kind of nice having that little check mark next to your YouTube name. But I've been thinking about just changing.
They got you with that little check mark.
I'm compromised, man. I've got my check mark and I don't want to give it up. So I'm ready to start canceling people. I'm trying to figure out ways I could, blackmail you, trying to get you to say something. I can maybe using this cancel culture to really elevate myself into like blue check mark on Twitter status. Uh-huh. So I'm thinking if I can cancel enough people, I'll get blue checked on Twitter. No, I'm kidding. We've been thinking about that. I really enjoy the podcasting format. It's fun. It's enjoyable. Like I like talking about current events, but the way that the web is structured right now, it's getting harder and harder to just speak your mind anywhere. So we're gonna see where it goes, man. We're gonna keep building. We've got a private forum. We got our members forum. We do weekly coaching calls in there. I enjoy helping people get healthy. I enjoy helping people with healthy diet and lifestyle. So we're going to be expanding that a little bit, and that's kind of our main way of drawing in revenue now. Most of our videos are, we don't make money as far as monetization goes on YouTube, right. And that's kind of our revenue model there. And we've got books. We've published several books over the years, so all of those are still highly relevant. And we're going to build up our members site, build up our membership section, continue doing coaching and stuff, and maybe I don't know, but maybe the censorship will chill out a little bit and you'll be able to talk about what you want to talk about. But if not, then we'll continue to try to build outside of the the standard YouTube platform. We work with alternate current radio, and we have a lot of our stuff is up on Spreaker as far as audio podcast format. And when I do something on YouTube, we're always putting out the audio as well. So we might maybe move towards more audio content. And so you can find us there on Spreaker, Primal Edge Health, or if you search alternate current radio on Spreaker, you can find us there. We run our private members forum. That's a big part of what we do. Weekly coaching calls in there and just helping people, connecting other people.
Let's plug that in. I love what you're doing. I want to plug that in. Tell me a little bit about like the coaching that you're doing. How are you helping people out with your coaching business? Yeah,
well, I mean, we've done private coaching for like 6 years now, right? Helping people to get healthy, helping people to lose body fat, helping people to get their lives together. So, I mean, that's something that I still love doing. I still meet with clients regularly, and that's always fun. And then once when you come in for private coaching, you also get 2 months access to our members forum, where we do weekly coaching calls in there too. And that's a more affordable way for people to get, coaching and get access to myself and Jessica. Mm-hmm. And we really like to spend time in there and build that up as a platform. So yeah, I mean, you can learn about all this at primaledgehealth.com. I really like connecting with people. I really like helping people out. I mean, so many people out there so many people have never thought that your diet and what you eat and the way that you eat can affect you physically and psychologically as well. So we've just seen so many people take back control of their health, reduce their inflammation, get control of the inflammatory processes in the body, get insulin sensitivity, and reduce their hunger using proper nutrition. So I think that's always going to be something that we're passionate about, always going to be something that we're doing. And, we've got a big push now for more and more fake food, 3D printed fake meat and plant-based meat alternatives. And so I think homesteading a lot of people are going to be looking into that, as food prices increase, as food instability and the bottlenecks in our food production system created by these multinational corporations, as this becomes more apparent, people are going to want to produce their own food more and more. So we're always going to, be advocating homesteading and advocating for small family farms and local food production. So I think that's a big thing. We'll be producing more food here and involve more in our local economy. So we're going to be working towards all of that and hopefully expanding that in different ways. Whatever we can do, we're not sure how we'll be able to scale, and we want to scale as big as we can in every way we can, with keeping our integrity and my blue check mark on YouTube.
Yeah. Well, listen, thanks for sharing all the perspectives that you shared. It's not everybody builds their own little version of paradise, but it's important to kind of learn from people's experiences, and that's kind of like what I strive when I talk to different guests that I bring on the show, and I'm humbled that you are over here for the second time. I really appreciate that you're doing what you're doing. We're still doing carnivore. We're still enjoying the recipes. We're in the production of all those videos that we shot. So I'll be in touch with Jessica when we're going to be putting those out. And then for those of you who are listening to this podcast and haven't heard the first one, check out the first one with Tristan, where we talk about carnivore diet and his journey from plant-based food to animal-based food, and a wonderful book that his wife Tristan Haggard published on carnivore recipes, which we enjoy, and I share this book with so many people, and they were blown away how awesome food could be made and not boring with just meats, because everybody's like, well, I'm just gonna eat burgers and steaks. Like, no, dude, there's just so many different things they can do that are just so awesome and tasty and satisfying that it blows my mind. So keep on doing what you're doing. I'm looking forward to more stuff from you, and again, appreciate you for being on the show, and good luck out there, and I hope that you're going to continue, producing what you're producing and being happy out there.
Hey man, I'm honored. I'm glad I could be of any use to you. I'm glad I could be of use to anybody out there listening. And I am honored and appreciate that you invited me on twice. And I'm stoked that you're enjoying the content, that you're enjoying the book, and that you're doing so well on carnivore. So maybe next time we could talk a little bit more about your journey, right? Like I keep trying to bite my tongue because I got so many questions I'd like to ask you, but maybe we can get into that next time, man. I'm glad you're doing well, and
I'd love to be on your show and talk about things that I am totally ignorant about, and learning from you on that. But also I'd love to share my journey and what I'm doing. Right now I'm more of a facilitator and host when I talk to my guests, but I am kind of transitioning right now into, because there's more exposure and people are approaching me to talk on their show, and I'd love to kind of share my little slice of life with others, and yeah, I'd love to do that sometime with you. So let's connect and schedule something up.
Thanks, man.
All right.
Awesome.
Tristan, thank you again. Talk to you next time.
Yeah, so nice meeting you, Adrian. So nice talking to you again, and I'm glad to know you, man. Have a great day.
Likewise. Take care now. Bye now.
Thanks for listening to a podcast with interesting people. Please subscribe and leave a review or comment.
And support us by sharing our episodes on social media. We really appreciate it. And for more information, visit us at apodcast.com. Thanks.